Have you ever seen a house that's been empty for years, just sitting there, quiet and forgotten? Now imagine millions of them, spread all across a country. That's exactly what's happening in Japan right now. Japan has a serious problem: more than 9 million empty homes. These abandoned houses even have a special name, Akiya. And the number keeps growing every single year. That's almost 14% of all homes in Japan, just empty. If you lined up all those houses side by side, they'd stretch across the entire country of Germany. Today, we're going to explore why this is happening, the history, the culture, and the surprising reasons behind Japan's sea of empty houses. Let's start from the beginning. What is an Akiya? The word, Akiya, in Japanese literally means empty house. That no one lives in, no owner, no renter, just silence. Some Akiya are old and falling apart, broken windows, overgrown gardens, roofs that are caving in. Others look perfectly fine from the outside, but nobody's home. You can find Akiya all across Japan, in tiny mountain villages, in seaside towns, and even in the suburbs of big cities. They're everywhere. So how did Japan end up with so many of these ghost houses? The story starts back in the 1960s and 70s, during Japan's incredible economic boom. Japan was building everything fast: factories, offices, apartment blocks, suburbs. Everyone needed somewhere to live, and new houses were going up everywhere. The population was growing, cities were getting bigger, more houses were being built every year to meet the demand. Life was good, and busy. But then something changed. In the 1990s, Japan's economy slowed down. This period is called the lost decade. And things never quite went back to how they were. At the same time, something else was quietly happening. Japan's birth rate was falling. Fewer babies were being born. Families were getting smaller. Japan's population started to shrink. And when there are fewer people, you need fewer houses. But the houses that were already built, they don't just disappear. This is where the problem really starts. Japan kept building new homes, even as the population was getting smaller. New is always preferred in Japan's housing culture. In Japan, a house loses most of its value the moment someone lives in it. After 20 to 30 years, the building itself is worth almost nothing. Only the land has value. This is very different from countries like the USA or UK, where older homes can be beautiful, valuable, and full of history. In Japan, old usually means unwanted. Now let's talk about the aging population, because this is one of the biggest drivers of the Akiya crisis. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the entire world. About 30% of Japan's population is over 65 years old. That's almost 1 in 3 people. And every year, more elderly people pass away, leaving their homes behind. When an elderly person dies, their house is passed down to their children. But here's the problem: the children don't always want it, especially if they've already moved to the city. Imagine your grandparents' house in a small mountain village 5 hours from Tokyo. You live in the city, you have a job, a family. Would you move back to take care of it? For most people, the answer is no. And so the house just sits there. Nobody lives in it, nobody maintains it. It starts to fall apart, slowly. This brings us to the second big reason for Akiya: the massive movement of people from the countryside to the city. In Japan, this has been happening for decades. Tokyo, Osaka, and other big cities have millions of opportunities: jobs, schools, restaurants, entertainment. Young people move there and never look back. Meanwhile, the villages and towns they left behind are getting quieter and quieter. Schools close, shops close, the community slowly fades away. Some rural areas in Japan have lost more than half of their population in the last 50 years. Imagine that: a town with half its people gone, half the houses empty. Now here's something fascinating: the third reason. It's about Japanese inheritance laws. When someone passes away, who actually owns the Akiya? In Japan, property is often left to multiple family members, all the children, maybe some cousins too. And they all have to agree before anything can happen to the house. Imagine 5 siblings scattered across Japan, 1 in Tokyo, 1 in Osaka, 1 in Hokkaido, all needing to agree on what to do with grandma's old house in the countryside. This often leads to disagreements, delays, and just giving up. The house goes undecided for years, sometimes for decades. And no one does anything about it. Even worse, some owners can't even be found. The original owner has passed away, the family records are unclear, and nobody knows who the legal owner is anymore. In 2023, Japan actually passed a new inheritance law to fix this. Families are now legally required to register property in their name within 3 years of inheriting it. But laws take time to change things. The problem has already been building for decades, and millions of Akiya are already out there with unknown owners. Now let's talk about culture. because Japanese attitudes toward old houses are a huge part of this story. Japan has a concept called new is better. Japanese buyers almost always prefer brand new homes. The idea of living in a home where strangers once lived feels uncomfortable to many. It's a cultural thing. There's also a practical reason. Many older Japanese homes use traditional building materials that don't meet modern earthquake safety standards. That's a real concern in Japan. Japan experiences thousands of earthquakes every year. People want to know their home will protect them. Older homes built before 1981 don't have the modern safety codes. So the owner of an old Akiya faces a tough choice: spend a fortune renovating it to meet modern standards, or just leave it. Many choose to leave it. Here's another twist: tearing down an Akiya isn't cheap either. Demolition in Japan costs money. And once you tear the house down, your property taxes actually go up. That's right, in Japan, empty land is taxed at a higher rate than land with a building on it. So it's actually cheaper to leave the old house standing than to knock it down. So you have an old house you don't want, you can't afford to fix it, you can't afford to tear it down, and selling it is nearly impossible. You're stuck, the house is stuck. Now, what about selling? Surely someone would want a cheap house, right? Well, the problem is that many Akiya are in areas where nobody wants to live anymore. If the local school has closed, the nearest hospital is an hour away, and there are no shops, who would move there? Even at 0 yen, some buyers hesitate. And yes, some Akiya are actually listed for nearly free. Some for $1 or even 1 yen. Websites called Akiya banks let you search for these homes. These Akiya banks are official databases managed by local governments. You can browse abandoned homes, sometimes for free, sometimes for just a few $1,000s. Some foreigners have actually taken advantage of this. People from the USA, Australia, and Europe have bought old Japanese farmhouses for almost nothing and turned them into dream homes. There are now YouTube channels, blogs, and communities dedicated to foreigners buying and renovating Akiya. It's become a whole movement, the Akiya dream. But it's not all easy. Foreigners buying property in Japan face language barriers, complex paperwork, and sometimes local communities that are nervous about outsiders. Now let's look at what the Japanese government is actually doing about this. Because they know this is a real problem, and they've started to act. Several local governments now offer cash subsidies to people who move to rural areas. Some towns offer money for each child you have, help with renovation costs, and even free land. The government also offers renovation grants, money to help you fix up an old home. The goal is to make rural areas attractive again so people will actually want to move there. Some towns are even experimenting with creative ideas, turning old Akiya into guest houses, craft workshops, and even community art spaces. Giving them new purpose. There's also a growing trend of urban Japanese people buying Akiya as weekend retreats. A slow life escape from the stress of city living. Very popular in the pandemic era. COVID-19 actually accelerated this trend. With remote work becoming normal, many Japanese workers realized they didn't have to live near the office anymore. But even with all these efforts, the problem is still growing faster than the solutions. By 2033, experts predict that 1 in 3 homes in Japan could be empty. That's 21 million empty homes. More than the entire housing stock of many countries. Think about Australia. Japan could have more empty houses than all of Australia's homes combined. So what's the solution? Honestly, there's no single easy answer. It will take a combination of policy changes, cultural shifts, and creative thinking. Some people believe immigration could help. Japan has been one of the most closed countries to immigration. But that is slowly starting to change as the workforce shrinks. Others say Japan needs to rethink its housing culture, to start seeing old homes as valuable, not disposable. It's a big cultural change, but some say it's possible. And some say the Akiya crisis is actually a hidden opportunity, for adventurous buyers, for creative communities, and for a different vision of how we live. Whatever happens, the story of Japan's Akiya is a window into something bigger. What happens when a country ages, when cities grow, and when the old world gets left behind. Thanks for watching.